I just made a kind of lousy intro for our vid. Hope you don't mind.
Sure thing.
Hope you don't
No
mind.
problem.
Awesome. Yeah. So I apologize for not having completed those testing on VPN channels in prior. It was my bad.
No, that's fine. They change all the time. So
Yeah, last time I was trying to connect to a Japanese VPN tunnel, and you heard that, and you somehow
yeah,
sensed massive data traffic, and apparently it was a denial of service attack, right?
yep,
Apparently, right? So I suppose
yes,
from now on, I will be periodically switching between different channels while we
yep, no
have
problem.
chats. Sounds cool? Great.
Yep.
So I was just out of courtesy of an old friend of yours. I allow me to ask, what have you been up to this week?
Mostly research and compiling submissions for review
Research.
that's coming up.
Uh huh. So
I've spent the month on the religious freedom review mostly.
uh huh.
That's taken the vast majority of my time.
Do you think do you think the interviews we did previously regarding religious freedom actually helped?
I don't think we covered a lot of topics in depth with religious freedom.
Uh huh. I agree.
Yes. No, we sort of only just skimmed the surface.
Due to the my poor expertise in journalism and the restrictions of the length of that vid, I even we still couldn't manage to cover all the topics within that 2 hours of time. So yeah,
No, it is
yeah.
a complex area, and we were touching on quite a few different topics. So.
Yeah, it was massive. Yeah, and I do actually receive
Yes.
several positive responses from my subscribers on YouTube.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I suppose we can somewhat rejoice about that.
Sure.
Nice. So okay, allow me to begin this interview. First of all, allow me to ask you: have you heard of the terminology called MGTOW or MGTOW?
Only very briefly come across the movement in my own studies. I've looked at in depth, or something that I do have a lot of knowledge on.
You don't have much of the knowledge on that, right? Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
No, I know roughly what the movement is, but
yeah,
yes.
because I didn't. I failed to let you know about that in advance, so I shouldn't have come out with.
Oh no, that's no problem. I have looked up.
Yeah.
We do. Being in political science, I do come across it a bit because there are alignments between the movement and certain political movements too. So it's something that I do look into, but I've never really looked at it from a sociological perspective. I've only looked at it into being able to basically data set people that belong to certain movements and trying to map them on the political spectrum. So that's been sort of my only real exposure to movement.
Real exposure to movement, right? Well, in fact, we can consider the so-called MGTOW or MGTOW, or the full name for this abbreviation is men going their own way, and it basically represents a bunches of single men who decide to isolate themselves from committing to legal marriage or a legally binded civil union of some sort.
Sure.
So
certainly.
Yeah, so first of all, what do you think of it? Do you think it will create some positive impact to Australian communities?
Well, movement is mostly comes about because of legal disparity between men and women. So in certain circumstances, women are disadvantaged. In other circumstances, men are disadvantaged. And this comes down to various traditions over marriage that have come from all over the place, some from the state and some from the church. What that has resulted in the legal system, when a marriage dissolves, legally the male is disadvantaged, whereas financially the female is disadvantaged. Now that a society where generally both have to work, the financial downside for the woman is no longer that substantial. So if a marriage dissolves, it is generally under the legal system, and usually due to children being involved, going to hurt the man more. It is starting to tilt in that direction. So one of the reasons for the movement is to shield against that inequality or injustice. However, the equality movement is also trying to address that. They're trying to
kind of
basically equalize everything. So there's many things where women don't have the same privileges as men, even if that's a societal or cultural thing. And then on the legal side, there's places where women will get a preference to men, especially when it comes to children.
Sure.
So the whole idea of equality is eventually both will be equal. So for the purpose of basically trying to shield yourself from legal injustices, for the short term, yes, I understand it. For the long term, I don't think it'll hold up. There's another, I understand there's others in the movement who are in it for a different reason. They just feel like they want full autonomy and really don't want that sacrifice, having to give up their lifestyle. And I believe you can find a relationship and not give up your lifestyle. You can also find up a relationship. You can also enter a type of relationship where you end up are happy to give up some or all of your lifestyle. It really depends on the person that you find. It's just unfortunate that not everyone will find happy to give up things for.
When you mentioned equality and autonomy, do you think females tend to want more autonomy and equality than men do? Or
just cut out there for a second. Can you repeat that question?
Yeah. I was just asking, which side do you think values equality and autonomy more, the females or males, when it comes to marriage and the legally binding relationship?
I don't think that comes down to gender at all. There's some people who do want equality and there's others that don't. The people that don't want equality, generally they want to be in a role where they dominate over someone else, or they want to be in a role where they're submissive to someone else. And that's perfectly fine. The main thing is, if we do have a structure of equality, then
we do.
Within your own home, You can choose what your family structure is. The problem is if we don't have equality in the societal and legal arena, then you don't have the power to choose what it is in your own home. There's many people who do want to be subservient in the relationship. There's many people who do want to dominate in the relationship, and there's those who want equality and they either want a cooperative or a complementary relationship, but they're generally willing not to take the default gender roles and to talk down and negotiate who does what.
So basically, it's never a matter of wants, but instead it's a matter of needs, right? Since men, we have the natural tendency to assume more dominance and more control, and thus more autonomy over, females. So it will
That's up for debate because there are a number of cultures where it's reversed.
The majority.
So the majority of people, the males dominate, but it's also the cultures where there's Abrahamic faith.
Yeah.
And so it does come down to that. If you look at cultures where there isn't that influence, you see that it's more equal or flipped. One exception is Japan, extremely male dominated, going back 1,000 years.
Kimiko Queen. Yeah,
yes.
the Serpent Queen. In fact, I got to know that concept since first time I was playing, Tomb Raider year 2013. That video game, it injected me the concept of, Serpent Queen Kimiko, who used to rule the ancient kingdom of Yamatai. Yamatai. It basically built the foundation, the very foundation of ancient Japan, and then eventually it grew into the state named Yamato. Some sort of because I didn't actually read too many history books, so I mostly obtained those type of knowledge mostly from video games, YouTube video clips and words of mouth from others and fictions. So I can't say that what I'm trying to what I'm trying to say here are all true. So yeah, but I just I merely told you what I think I know or what I think I knew.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, you are absolutely right. Some some cultures, some countries are dominated by females rather than males, primarily.
Yes.
So yeah, and
it has changed throughout time, but what we do have is the big three religions. The Abrahamic faiths are very, very male dominated, and that's mostly due to language limitations in
language
the early scriptures.
Limitations. Language limitations. But what makes you think? What makes you think that language limitations caused these sort of primarily dominated female tribes and principles, set of principles? What makes you think?
Well, I think the language limitations in the early scriptures did stop us from really clarifying a few ideas. This one will be a whole thing for another time if we're going to go into scripture. But it's an area that I studied. because I was trying to work out the difference between the Eastern philosophies and the Western philosophies, and there are a lot of crossover.
So you actually did some.
But they have interpreted it differently, and it does come down to language.
It sounds to me you apparently did lots of homework regarding such topic in advance.
Yes.
Right?
I've just spent years studying various scriptures.
So it's the need. It was the need that drives you to study those things, right? The need to communicate with Asians drive you to study those things, right? And
look, when I was younger, I was really trying to find myself, and I thought, look, to understand myself, I really have to look at history. There was many things about our modern culture that I couldn't understand where it came from. So I did want to look at history. At the same time, when I look at the field of study, which is called classical antiquities, it's mostly about Western philosophy, and everyone around me that was going down that road was looking at Western philosophy, and that's looking at ancient Greece and Rome, etc. I decided to depart from that and look at the basically Eastern theology, because there wasn't a lot of people, even in Asia, there wasn't a lot of people going into it. So it's something that I decided to really dive into in depth, and that covered everything from history to language, culture, philosophy, and religion. And of course, I did have to touch on Roman and Greek, but generally I stuck with the Tibetan and Japanese philosophies.
Sounds amazing. Oh man. So how many years did you actually spend trying to gain insightful and understanding of all these cultures, this knowledge?
Well, I've never actually stopped, so I guess I've spent 18 years on this now.
18 years.
Yes.
Shit, man. So yeah, I suppose, not that I suppose I know that you are the right person to talk to when it comes to, especially East Asian cultures, East Asian studies, and especially those migrants who have East Asian cultural backgrounds, right?
Yes.
Awesome. So allow me to ask, the final question for a final question regarding MGTOW, men going their own way.
Sure.
Do you think that eventually, MGTOW movement will diminish and eventually, perish, fade away?
Look, there's actually been movements like this throughout history, and Japan's going through one now, and it's not the first time.
But I really see them. I really see Japanese youth protesting against, feminism, genocentric society, those kind of things. They all kind of appear very, meek and mild when it comes to making protests against the government and the government policies. They're just, very mild, and the way I see them, they even show more, they even seem more submissive, even more submissive than Chinese. Even some Chinese, they are very brave. They dare to protest against the authorities, even here in mainland China, and especially those groups of people, they tend to concentrate over several provinces like Sichuan and Shanxi,
Yes.
those let's say southwestern Chinese, they tend to protest against the government. And according to what I managed to dig out, the current Chinese regime has deployed heavy police military forces to those provinces, and they always keep a constant watch over those people, and they effectively censored pretty much all VPN traffic towards overseas. So I suppose it's pretty evident to see that Japanese people, they are far more submissive than Chinese.
Yep, definitely.
And
as a movement, I think it will come and go.
It will come and go, right?
Just judging by what's happened in the protest, it seems like the protests than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So it's protesting an injustice or inequality, and I do believe that will eventually be addressed, and then there'll be less need for the movement. So it'll diminish at that time, and then if those injustices creep up again, then the movement will revive.
So
you see it with a lot of movements, like
using some simple principles of logic, we can pretty much anticipate it will repeat the pattern over and over. I mean, if we see that issue with a larger scope, let's say several hundred years. Let's zoom in our scope into several hundred years. Let's say 200 years, 300 years. Do you think the pattern will just repeat over and over periodically and on a regular basis?
I think so. Humans are doomed to repeat their past historical mistakes. So some countries somewhere in the world, law, like we do have now, that disadvantages some men.
That's pretty true.
So we have the information right in front of us. People are going to jump on this movement again. But hopefully, because this movement's going to have history, most likely, the governments of the day will see, this is what happened last time, people stood up against this. It'll make laws change ways more quickly in the future. So once you've got that precedent there, people know what happens when you go down that road. So I think it's something that will always be there. It will make history. But I do believe it will come and go.
Do you think Aussies are repeating some histories here, especially those unpleasant ones?
With some things. With which?
I mean, histories such as racism, inequality?
Yes, it had been heading in the wrong direction for a few years. At the moment, it's all coming to a critical mass. We're ready to. There's who, of course, are against racism, but won't sort of stand up or won't. They don't want to sacrifice anything.
But why not? Why aren't they?
There's a lot of people. Then you've got people who do want to happy to give some things up. Then you've got some more extreme views also. Then on the other side, you've got people who will fight to the way that they are. And you've got another group of people who are fighting to. So all of this is coming out into the open at the moment. Now, we do have various laws and things in Australia that do say this is how things are meant to be, and those laws haven't been followed that closely for a long time, but now that our focus is on it, things will be enforced more and